armchair psychiatrists, we're going to have a look at Temujin's childhood and see how this began him on the road to empire. Temujin grew up on the edge of the steppe and forest, and would likely have relied on hunting as much or more than herding. They would have had small herds, but nothing like the vast herds of hundreds of sheep, goats, yaks, and horses that many of the steppe herders did. Essentially, they were poor in the most important source of wealth, and in material goods as well, as few Chinese goods like iron weapons, silk, gold, and silver items, and jewelry would make it so far north. Raiding and hunting would be their main form of gathering wealth, and every man in the group would have been trained as a warrior as a result. Esugai's band was based entirely on those who would flock to him due to his skill as a military leader, and included families from a number of tribes and clans, although likely no more than a few hundred people, or 100 people. Significantly, some Taichiud, led by a man named Targetai, and even including two of Ambahai Khan's wives. Esugai's exact position on the steppe hierarchy is unclear, especially given that he was a nephew of the last Kamag Khan, Hutala. He appears to have made the most of this heritage anyways, by womanizing, raiding, and drinking. Now, Temujin would have grown up essentially like every other Mongol child, learning how to ride a horse by the time he was 4 years old, learning how to hunt and track. He was described as an excellent tracker, and how to make and use a bow, the Mongols' principal weapon. So by the time he was 8 or 9 years old, Esugai took him to go get a wife. So this would be around 1170. Now, Esugai might have just been trying to get Temujin out of the home for a bit. He seems to have not gotten along very well with his older half-brother Bektir, or his father even. And this seems to have been a good way to get him to grow up a bit. So, Esugai was taking him to the Ongarad, Urlun's tribe, and the traditional and preferred wives of the Mongols. Now, on the way there, he ran into Dai Sakhin, a man of the Ongarad tribe, but from a different clan from Hulun. His daughter, Borte, was only a year older than Temujin, and they seemed to hit it off pretty good. So, Esugai, not wanting to ride all the way out to the Ongarad main tribe, decided this was as good as any, and dropped Temujin off to live with them for 3 or 4 years before he was old enough to actually marry Borte and go out on his own. Now, it is a little unclear from the sources, however, how long Temujin was with Borte's family, whether it was a few weeks or some years. The secret history of the Mongols implies that it was a very short time. Either way, Esugai, while on his way back from dropping off Temujin, or on a raid sometime afterwards, ran into some Tartars who offered him some food, and as per steppe custom, Esugai politely accepted and was poisoned. Possibly revenge for his capture of Temujin Uja 9 years before. Now, Esugai made it back to his tribe, clearly dying by now, and sent out his retainer Menglik to go and bring Temujin back. Now, Temujin arrives just after Esugai dies, or shortly before, but either way, he dies. Suddenly, Esugai's 2 wives and 7 children were without a man, and became a whole lot of mouths that the rest of the tribe needed to take care of, and weren't so keen to do so. So, early the next spring, or shortly after Esugai's death, again, it's not very clear from the sources. The secret history of the Mongols, our main source for this, is absolutely horrendous when it comes to chronology. The tribe began to slowly move away. It appears on the initiative of that Targetai man, of that Taichiud man, Targetai, and making to abandon Ulun and take all their animals and possessions with them, leaving them to a certain death. An old man, Karaka, from a minor tribe, actually stood up to them and tried to get them to stay, and for his good deed, had a spear ran through his chest by one of Targetai's companions. So Temujin was learning pretty quickly that his blood relations as Targatai and the Taichiad were distantly related to them. Their blood relations meant nothing, as they showed no mercy to them. The secret history of the Mongols describes how Olun held the family together. 7 children, the oldest no more than 10, the youngest just a baby, but none of them starved, as she worked hard to feed them, gathering whatever she could, roots, berries, plants, whatnot. The young boys hunting and even fishing, which fishing was rather looked down upon actually by the tribes, and not done terribly often, but they needed to survive. But they'd live like this for the next 3 or 4 years, but not all of Temujin's young life would be doom and gloom. Around the time he was 11 years old, he met a family that was living near them, grazing some of their herds, and met their son, only a year or 2 older than him, named Jamukha of the Jadaran tribe, a boy slightly older than Temujin, of aristocratic blood, and very, very distantly related. The two would hit it off immediately and become the best of friends, and would actually go on to take the Anda Oath when they were about 11 years old, making them blood brothers and effectively, as far as the Mongols were concerned, actual brothers. This was such a strong oath. Now, unfortunately for Temujin, his young friend Jamukha's family would not come back the next year, and it would be a number of years before the two boys would see each other, under very different circumstances. But I'm not going to spoil that one. His friendship with Jamukha is interesting because it's basically the only time in Temujin's childhood he's ever described as having fun or playing games, playing a knucklebone game, which is basically like dice. Now, it wasn't all fun, however. Not everything was going well back with his family. Sometime around 1175, when Temujin was about 13 years old, Bekter had been pushing Temujin to his limit. Bekter and his full brother Belgutai, a strong boy but not terribly clever, had been stealing the food Temujin and his full brothers had been catching. When complaining to his mother about this, Olun actually sided with Bekter, not wanting to split their little band apart. This worried Temujin for a number of reasons, as Bekter was essentially establishing himself as the dominant male in the group, and as Esugai's eldest son could actually inherit Temujin's mother as his own wife. Temujin never took kindly to being ruled over by another person, especially when they were putting his own family's life on the line. So, he and his full brother Khazar, next in age and skilled with a bow, cornered Bekter when he was alone, and each shot an arrow into him. Before he died, Bekter asked them not to harm his brother Belgutai. Olun was furious and unleashed an avalanche of insults on the boys when they came back. How dare they weaken themselves in the face of their true enemies, the Taichiad, or the Tartars? How dare they betray their family? For what it's worth, Temujin would not harm Belgutai. So, how do the sources reflect on the murder of his half-brother? The Mongol sources, the secret history of the Mongols, most notably, don't really condone or condemn it. Depicting his mother condemning it, obviously, but at the same time using it as an opportunity to show how hard Temujin's life had been, and the hard choices he was forced to make for the good of their family to survive. So, anyways, by the time he was 13 years old, he'd already killed a man. That's pretty metal.